Well, we have 16:30 on the clock. I'll call the meeting to order today and welcome everyone. And to acknowledge that the District of Tofino operates within the territory of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation. And notice to attendees that the meeting is being video recorded and will be published on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel. And a notice to virtual attendees to sign up for the public comment and question period using the Q&A function in Zoom. To register, participants are required to enter their full name, residential address, and the agenda item they wish to speak to. And for approval of meeting location, I'll move from the chair that the pursuant to section 15 of the District of Tofino meeting procedure bylaw number 1229/2016 as amended, the November 2023 committee of the whole meeting be held electronically via Zoom and live broadcasted on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel. And that the facility provided for the public to watch and hear the meeting be located at Municipal Hall, 380 Camel Street in Tofino, BC. Thank you, Councillor Sawyer. All those in favor? Motion carried. And I'll move from the chair that the November 2023 committee of the whole agenda be adopted. Thank you, Councillor Sawyer. All those in favor? None opposed, motion carried. And I'll move from the chair that the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held August 28, 2023 be adopted. Thank you, Councillor Sloan. All those in favor? And none opposed, motion carried. I'll look over to Keegan there and see if there are any public comments on the agenda items today.
Thank you, Councillor Steer. I will now do an open call to the public for comment. If there's anyone attending online via Zoom and would like to make a comment, you can do so now using the Q&A function on Zoom. You'll need to state your name, your address, and the agenda item you're speaking to. I'll do a call now. Going once, going twice. Christine has a question here. Where's the link to today's agenda? I can't find it. Just the agenda are on our website at tofino.ca, and you'll find it under the committee of the whole section in that website address. Going twice and going 3 times. There are no other questions or comments at this time. Thank you.
So sorry, Mr. Keegan, we do have one person queued up.
There was one question regarding the agenda for today, and I referred her to our website.
Roger, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Steer.
Seeing that there is no comments then, and there are no delegations, no correspondence, and so we can go right into agenda item number 8, presentations and report. And we have the utility rate review report from infrastructure to public works.
Place. Yeah, we can move it. You okay, move it? Yes.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Today I will be presenting on the utility rate review. A little bit of an overview. Staff is working on a utility rate to bring back to council in March. And as part of that work, we're looking to amend some of our other bylaws at the same time that are related or adjacent to the water utility and the sewer utility rates. So there's probably, as you can see here, a number of bylaws and policies and plans that we're going to look at the same time, and just wanted to give council a bit of a taste of what you can expect in the coming months. So what's happening in the background, I think we're all familiar with, but we have an asset management program that's up and running. We have a water master plan that's due within the coming month. The completion of the wastewater treatment plant next year. As these items converge, it's a really great time to open up some of the old bylaws that we haven't spent much time with over the last 5-10 years, as well as obviously look at our rates both for water and sewer. This sort of overview will take the form of bylaw and policy updates, which will come back to council individually over the next couple of months. So again, the first one here, and probably the most important, is a review of the water utility bylaw, which is the bylaw that regulates the use of water in Tofino, including rates. How do we hook up? What responsibilities we have? What responsibilities the private side has? This water utility bylaw, specifically the rates, will be impacted by the asset management plan, water master plan, and obviously our 5-year operational plans. Some of the considerations that we've talked about internally and the considerations that we would think about when adjusting our rates is seasonality of water demand, conservation pricing. So if we had a really successful conservation program, what would that mean for pricing, and how do we build that into that rate review? Water conservation expenses, if we were to, for example, purchase a number of water tanks that we could provide to the community at a discounted rate, how much that cost? How does that fit into the rates? What would we have to charge to allow us to do that? Looking at the ratios between residential and commercial uses or any new classes that we may consider. We want to make sure that our rates reflect our conservation stages, and those are under review as well. And then ensuring that we have support in the rate structure for emergency water operations. And so as those will be probably the bulk of the water utility bylaw in terms of rates. And then there's going to be a much larger comprehensive review of the bylaw in terms of items that aren't necessarily working for so longer or that we've grown past. So those are outlined and detailed in a report. And again, this will come back to council as its own standalone report and bylaw. And our expectation is we have a pretty fulsome conversation with council at that time. At the end of today's presentation, if council has any other items that has come up for yourselves, we would like to hear about it as staff to make sure that as we start working with our consultants, we're understanding where council's at. And again, we'll be coming back to council each step of the process, of the first reading, the second reading, third reading, and final. So there'll be a lot of time for us to work together to make sure we got this right. But it would be nice tonight if anybody's prepared to let us know if they have any concerns or ideas about rates. The sewer utility bylaw will be very similar process. So we're going to be reviewing the rates. There's a number of amendments that we want to make to that bylaw as well. The large elephant in the room is the wastewater treatment plant, and what are the operational costs of that and what that looks like moving forward. Currently, I think everybody's familiar that sewer is charged at 90% of the water rate. That ratio is likely going to change with the wastewater treatment plant coming online, and likely also because of our asset management planning and the water master plan. So there's a lot of moving pieces for us for this rate review. For our enforcement bylaws, so there's two of them, our MTI bylaws and our bylaw notice bylaws. We wanted to make sure that we're updating those as we're updating the utility bylaws. Currently, these bylaws, we can enforce portions of the conservation bylaw, but we can't enforce water utility or sewer utility bylaws. We didn't include that in these bylaws. So we'll make sure that we close that gap and give ourselves some additional enforcement options in terms of water use and protection of our infrastructure. The subdivision development control bylaw is 10 years old next year. It is already a budget item for 2024, but there'll be some items in there that relate to water and building utility bylaws, specifically in terms of things like meters or connections or backflow infrastructure. And so we'll want to sit down and think about the subdivision development control bylaw as we amend the utility bylaws. And again, this will also turn to our asset management team to make sure that the items that we're maybe reviewing in the subdivision development control bylaw meet up with our long-term asset management goals. The water use and conservation bylaw, I think we're all familiar with this one after last year. I know I am. The intent here is again to review and revise that bylaw and make sure that the stages are working for the district and our community. There's public consultation on this bylaw already. Understanding that for this bylaw to be effective, we need to have the buy-in from our community. Emergency water plan, we developed a new emergency water response plan in the summer of 2023 as we were headed into potential stage 4. It's also part of our water master plan process, and so council can expect to see an update to the emergency water plan this year as well, or early next year. Water conservation program is different than the bylaw. This is a program that will help us determine what actions we're going to take and ensure that happens on a yearly basis, and there's some sort of framework around conserving the water. So it could look like maintaining continuing the water audits that we can already do, bulk buying, storage, our communication approach, staffing. Do we need a facilitator or something like that to help the program along? And then this may have, again, budget implications for a rate review, depending on what type of conservation program we end up with. The utility bill adjustment policy has been an important piece of our leak detection program for a number of years. It's the intersection of our public system, which provides water, and the private side, whom we're supplying. We want to make sure that this policy aligns with our current understanding of our system and our asset management program. We're also going to look at some development related policies. These are tangentially as part of utility rate review, but this is a way for the district to receive infrastructure in advance of potentially some of our own timelines. So if a developer comes to town, there's a number of different ways we can work with them to have them install infrastructure that we need to support not only their development, but also our growth projects into the future. These get quite complicated, and I actually need a flow chart to help me understand them. So today I'll probably just leave it at that, but there'll be three that we'll be looking at: a front end agreement, a DCC credit policy, and a latecomer agreement. These were developed, the drafts for these were developed through the development approvals process and the grant that we just undertook in the last number of years. So I expect to see council a report on these policies alone, and with probably a couple of flowcharts. Final notes for this presentation. We will be undertaking a lot of consultation through these various bylaws and plans. Some will be a little bit more detailed, and some will be a little bit broader. Again, we're trying to look at this as a comprehensive approach. So it seems like a good time to do a review of a number of these bylaws and plans to make sure we're ready for 24 and the years to come. The timelines may be a little bit different and may move around a little bit. We're going to deal with the large ones like the rate reviews fairly soon, and then as time allows over the coming months, sort of knock off some of the other ones as well. There will be more details from each of these in their separate reports that come in front of Mayor and Council. And also, it's good to say that there's a number of other plans that aren't included here. So for maybe not months, but in years to come, the rollout of our asset management plans and policies, amendments to our development cost charges, potential amendments to capture the capital and infrastructure levy, long-term staffing plans, and capital planning. So this is a bit of an omnibus approach to clean up what we have, and then there's going to be a number of new items coming down the pipe in the coming years. So that's it for my presentation. I think the report provides a little bit more detail, but we'll look for any comments or questions from council, and any specific comments about water utility rates and some of the items that staff should be considering as we go through that process.
Sure. Keegan, if maybe so I can see Kat just in case.
Yes.
Take the screen off. And I'll open it up to council for any questions for Mr. Rogers.
Under the sewer utility bylaw, you mentioned review and consider whether a metered service is necessary. What sort of considerations would be in there?
Well, the consideration would be that we don't have any metered services in Tofino, and so removing that from the bylaw is probably likely. But I would want to spend some time with our team or any consultants to make sure that's the right approach. But I don't believe, except for maybe CERMAC, but I'd have to double check that. But there's one, if not none, in Tofino right now.
Okay, I mean, I've talked in the past about this. I feel that some of the businesses that have access to wells, what goes in is not necessarily related to what comes out. So I've always supported doing a pilot project on some of those businesses.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, I don't think we're at the stage to put meters everywhere yet, but I think that would be a good start.
Mr. Rogers, I know that during the water issues in the summer, we talked about a staging or step rate that would match the stages of conservation. I don't see it here, and I just wanted to know, is this this water rate, the water rates proposed here, those will be going forward, and you're not going to do a step rate?
No, so the rates that are within the report are what our current rates are and our current rate structure. So as we move forward, one of the thoughts that we had as well was to consider whether adding different rates to the different stages would help support our conservation efforts as a community. So it's, again, right now it's quite open. We haven't set the parameters around what that rate review will look like. Yeah.
I was reading through, I saw a couple different numbers. I was needing some clarity on that. Thanks.
Look to the other side of the table. Is there any questions from this side of the table?
Yeah, through the chair, just understand the conversation we're having about, water conservation and then funding the wastewater treatment plant. I just want to, for us to be aware that I understand we have to be able to pay for it, but I don't want people conserving water to somehow then feel a higher price tag by doing what we're asking them to do. I'm very aware of that, and I also feel like that could negatively impact conservation efforts if people are like, well, why am I going to try to save water if I'm just gonna have to pay more? And I understand that may not necessarily be the case, but that is the conversation that I'm hearing.
It's a great question. I think it'll be top of mind for us. I haven't been involved myself with the review. I see, Ms. Atiana has been, and I think these kind of conversations that we have is raising rates and conserving and trying to find what that kind of the comfortable place to be is. So I think council can expect to see some of those conversations come back to this table. So we may have a number of different options to share with council to say, if we do this, we can look at rates here. Or if we do this, we can see rates here. And I think so council will have an opportunity to address some of those concerns. But definitely, I've heard that as well.
Okay, thank you.
So my question was I read in here now, I can't find it. My notes not very thorough, but what is turning off gravity sewer services? Isn't there someone?
I believe in our current bylaw, we have it as a provision says we were gonna, if someone's non-compliance, we can turn off their gravity sewer, but we can't.
Okay.
So it's just reviewing that bylaw and taking out items that don't make sense. And then as we take those items out, we'd be looking at things. What are the implications of taking this out, making sure that we're not. Making sure we're thinking about everything operates in matter, but we're turning off, you can't turn off a gravity sewer, so we just want to take that confusion out of the bylaw.
And then through the chair. My other question is with I think it would be under development related policies. As new developments come on, have you been considering if there would be a way to have a fee or a rebate if our conservation efforts work, if they could sign into I'm gonna get all these barrels, could they get a discount or?
I think that'll be part of the conversation. I haven't actually got too far into looking at solutions, but that's sort of the idea of that conservation program to address what does that look like? Are we charging the higher users using a little bit more and using that money to funnel back into a conservation program that provides us storage containers so then someone else who's done well can get a discount in it or something like that. Some of the ideas, but we haven't actually spent the time to sit down and think about that yet. So, but it's something important for us to think about now and to hear from you in the sense that whenever we do a rate review, you look at all those operational costs, and one of those operational costs is by $100,000 worth of 1 cubic meters things. We need to know that so that we can adjust the rates accordingly. So that's how these things are sort of tied together.
I have two questions. What would bulk purchasing be? Would that be buying and storing to get through a drier time, possibly buying in whatever, when there's more supply and more maybe. Is that what we're talking about, or we're talking about a large user getting a different rate? I don't know what bulk quite means.
The bulk buying in the sense that I intended it in the presentation was if the district would go out and pre-purchase a number of water storage units at a certain price, but getting a discount for those because we purchase so much, and then be able to pass that discount on to a consumer who might want to use that for their own homes. Or working with, the other way to think about this is working with the water audit consultants that we're using, work with the individual businesses to try to get them to do group buys in the same way, but on the private side. When we, this year, an example was the what are we trying to say here?
Aerator.
Thank you. The aerators that we purchased boxes of them and have them up for free at the front desk. That's one idea, a small version of that. What I should have prefaced this with is that we haven't made any decisions about this. This is very preliminary for us. We haven't begun the process of consultation. This is more in the idea stage now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of what the intent was that we've most likely just would buy or pre-purchase a number of somethings and then buy those as a discount to the community for the purpose of conserving water somehow.
And then I guess this is more just a comment at this point as we go into treating our liquid waste. There's a couple things that I guess are unknowns right now, like the quantity and the quality of that liquid waste. As we go into periods of high conservation, I would imagine that our liquid waste gets more concentrated and may cost differently to treat in those times. So I'm just hoping that whatever we bylaws we might look at can be responsive to those kind of changes, or have an built-in mechanism for reviewing it, because it is new and we don't know exactly at different types and times of year. It may be costing more to treat the same amount of liquid waste because we're conserving water and it's more concentrated. So I don't know.
I think it's a great point.
Councillor Thomas, I don't know if you had your hand up or not, but I looked up. You're good? Great. I do a couple comments and then just one question, and I concur with Councillor McMaster. I was curious in terms of the potential meter pilot project for the sewage going out potentially, and some of those to see what that might look like. I think that would be an interesting approach to what coming out. Anyways, you get the idea. So I support the idea going there. And then the other, and I think it alludes to what Councillor Sloman's been talking about, is a lot of those incentive type opportunities within our conservation program, and into seeing what maybe tried and true programs that are out there. So we don't necessarily need to create the wheel. And of course, there may be something unique, that makes sense. So certainly exploring those incentive opportunities, I think, would be a direction. And then I have just a question, and it relates to the rates themselves. And I don't know how to quite phrase it, in the sense there's the discussion I often have with some of the community members around the residential and the commercial class, and the rate differences there, and what appears on first glance to be a large discrepancy in there, until you read further that the first 30 cubic meters is included in the fixed rate, and then it's tiered within there. But maybe I don't know. Maybe if you could explain the rationale behind that, and maybe and I didn't do the math, if it equates out to those rates, and I know you're maybe yeah, I'm looking over here too. Maybe if you could explain if those rates, for the residential class, are even with what the commercial would be, based on the free 30 or the inclusive 30 cubic meters and the tiered rates moving forward, just so I have an understanding of where we come up with those rates between the residential and the commercial.
Thank you for the question.
He was staring right over.
So quite a bit of work went into developing these rates, and different objectives were established to determine which classes we should have and what proportion of revenues those classes should pay. The residential class, I'll probably give a longer answer rather than just answering the question, but where we started was determining the overall consumption and the proportion of consumption once we established the two classes. So we have residential and we have commercial and other. Other properties will have either a blended use or purely commercial use, or be strata properties. So where there's a purely residential property, we took the proportion of that consumption based on the overall consumption level and established our revenue requirements and proportioned out the revenue requirements. And then from there, we worked backwards to establish our rates. So the fairness and equity piece in that is ensuring that the classes that we had separated out were essentially paying for the proportion of consumption. So whether for every property, whether the rate, once you calculate the overall usage on each property, or the average usage is equivalent in each class, I think I probably need a little bit of time to do that math, so I won't answer that question on the fly. But that's how we would establish the utility rates, and we'll do something very similar this time, where we look at the demand and we look at from the supply side, we establish what our overall consumption will likely be based on previous numbers, and then we'll work backwards from there. We've done a bit of a staged approach to this rate review, where we kept the classes the same the last rate review, but this time we're examining the consumption levels, particularly within that commercial and other class, to see if we need to parse that out a little bit to create a bit more fairness and equity in the rate structure. So I hope that somewhat answers the question.
It does, and it just, it helps, when this does come to fruition, that because it's often said, well, why is the, residential paying so much more based on, what they see on the rate structure there. And so, more fulsome understanding and maybe our ability to communicate where those rates and how those are established would be valuable for the public to understand. I'll look back to Councillor Anderson.
And just one more question, and this is about the recommendation specifically. The first item is that the municipal ticket information system bylaw be amended, and I imagine that the ticket bylaw, part of the bylaw, we're talking about tickets that specifically relate to utilities and not all tickets in general. And the reason I'm asking the question is just to clarify for anyone that might be listening or reading the reports, and that we're not considering all tickets at this point, just the utilities. Okay, thanks.
There are no other questions. Since you were reading that recommendation, would you mind making that recommendation?
Read that. I have a couple of seconds. Okay, I'll move that staff be authorized to prepare amendments to the following bylaws for council's consideration. The municipal ticket information system bylaw number 1088, 2009, bylaw notice enforcement and dispute adjudication system bylaw number 1107, 2010, subdivision and development control bylaw number 1201, 2014, water utility bylaw number 1213, 2015, sewer utility bylaw number 1214, 2015, water use and conservation bylaw number 1224, 2016, and that staff be authorized to prepare amendments to the following policies for council's consideration: emergency water plan, water conservation program, and utility bill adjustment.
Thank you, Councillor Sloman, for seconding. Any other question or discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Seeing none opposed, motion carried. Next up on our agenda is 8.2 Q3 financial report. And I see our Director of Corporate Services heading to the podium.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I am here today to present the Q3 2023 financial results. I will do this as well as the other directors and staff members who are in the room today to help council understand the results that we have for Q3. So I'm going to start off with the financial officers report, and then the divisions will report on their operations and projects to September 30th. So taxes were due July 4th, 2023. And update on property taxation or taxes receivable to that point to September 30th. So as of the tax due date on July 4th, we had $1.3 million of taxes receivable outstanding, which is about approximately 24.6% of the total current taxes. July 30th, we had over 800,000 remaining, or 16.1%. As of September 30th, we had 500.
For a second, please. I see Councillor Thomas has her hand up. I'm curious if I may have missed something, and I'm just seeing her picture up there now. Councillor Thomas, did you have?
Sorry, the PowerPoint wasn't sharing and now it just came up on my screen. So we're good. I can drop my hand down again. Sorry for that.
Roger, thank you. I'm sorry.
No worries. As of September 30th, 2023, we had nearly $600,000 remaining, or 11.2%. And I'm happy to report as of November 30th, our balance dropped to $134,600, or 2.6% of our current year municipal taxes. So we're doing well in the collection of our current year taxes. We've received 6 supplementary adjustments to date, and supplementary adjustments are results from appeals through the Property Assessment Appeal Board or reassessments from BC Assessment. Those 6 supplementary adjustments to date actually have a net income of, or net impact, sorry, of current taxes, on current taxes of less than $1,000. For 2023 tax sale, which was held the last, or should have been held in the last Monday of September, we had no projects subject to tax sale, which was similar to what we experienced in 2022. And I've got a summary table there of our arrears and delinquent taxes. And a balance of, as of September 30th, 2023, our arrears were close to 18,000, which was actually lower than previous years. And then delinquent, we had just a little shy of $1,000 in our delinquent taxes. Any questions?
Just the supplementary adjustments.
Yes.
Could you, just because I think I got to revise. Bill, I'm just curious, could you explain once again to me what the supplementary adjustments are?
So we receive of the 6, actually 5 of those were directly resulted from appeals from the Property Assessment Appeal Board.
Okay. And
then one was direct from BC Assessment.
Okay. And that was in an amount altogether of?
The net impact. So the results that came through the Property Assessment Appeal Board would have actually decreased the tax assessments, and then the one that came direct from BC Assessment was actually an increase to that property. So the net was under 1,000.
Thank you.
So next I want to talk about the 2023 or Q3 financial operational risks. You might recall I did talk about this in our budget presentation. For inflation, we continue to see uncertainty. We see the tenders that we are issuing actually coming in, providing a range of bid values compared to coming in prior to this quarter higher than budget. We're also seeing more advertising for contractors for available for work. But we continue also to see wide fluctuation in commodities such as fuel. In terms of infrastructure replacement, we're still experiencing emergency repairs in our critical infrastructure. And later in this presentation, there will be a presentation from asset management, which will expand on this area of risk. Interest rates. Interest rates on borrowing have decreased since our Q2 report to council, where the long-term rates are now closer to our 2023 budgeted rate of 4.28%. As of last week, our long-term borrowing rates were 4.37. So they're coming down, but they're fluctuating. We have debt servicing in our reserve fund, and we'll be fine for 2023, but we'll be reassessing for future years' budgets. On the flip side, we're realizing higher rates of return on our investments. So they are equating, they're close to equating. We're seeing some higher interest rate on our debt, but we're also seeing higher interest rates received on our investments. So we continue to see both the rates for borrowing investments as uncertain, as opposing expert opinions on what the long-term rate forecast is, and uncertainty in the economy globally as well as Canadians. So there are a lot of uncertainty there. For staffing, during Q3, we continue to see the impact of staff vacancies throughout the district, affecting our ability to carry out our 2023 work plans. Moving into Q4, however, many of these vacancies have been filled, happy to say. Any questions on those risks? Okay. So contingency allocation. So in every budget, we allocate dollar values in both the general water and sewer funds as contingency. So we'll allocate any unplanned or unexpected items against this budget. So for our general fund contingency, we have $180,000 at the beginning of the year. In corporate services, we've got staff-related expenses, which include overtime and training. We've got alarm monitoring upgrades for Municipal Hall and some advertising totaling over $38,000. Community services, staff-related expenses for overtime and training. We've got a business licensing software, additional costs there, and early childhood educator mentor expenses to assist and grow our team in the child center, as well as some alarm monitoring upgrades for our fire hall, totaling over $45,000. Infrastructure and public works, staff-related expenses for overtime and training, alarm monitoring upgrades for our public works yard, equipment replacement parts, equipment for the backhoe, emergency porta potties, rentals during our water restriction phase. And then we've got some survey costs related to the Mackenzie Beach road work. And that totals just a little over $57,000. So going into December or September 30th or October 1st, we've got a remaining contingency value of $39,000. Any questions on those? Our water contingency fund, we allocated $48,000 at the beginning of the year, and we've utilized a little over $22,000 related to staffing, additional staffing, a reorder of supplies for water related to water main break, and electrical work for security upgrades. Moving into the final quarter of 2023, $25,000 remaining in that contingency fund. For sewer, we started off the year at $56,888. We've allocated $9,000 related to increased staffing and an alternative power source for our lift stations. Moving into the final quarter, we've got a healthy balance there, close to $48,000.
And in fact, on the last slide, and I should have asked right away, but if, for example, there's 39,000 left for if we were to go over that, we certainly, if it's a contingency fund, but where would if it went over, where would that money come from?
Thank you for the question. Good question. We have various strategies where, depending on the value, of course, of what, if we depleted this balance, the value of that additional item. If there's some other surpluses and other budget surpluses in other areas of our operating budget, we can definitely look at maybe reassigning the budget. So we would look at strategies such as that.
Thank you.
So corporate, just a slide again, just providing what the corporate service division, what the work activities are for financial services and legislative services. Yeah, very straightforward. And here's a snapshot of the administration budget to September 30th. I'll highlight just a few areas. So in revenues, we've got higher than expected investment returns on our operating cash balances. I mentioned earlier we were receiving an interest rate at approximately 5.27% on our municipal finance authority money market funds. So that is primarily the reason for the budget remaining in the revenue line of $88,000 there. In the terms of the grants, we received $100,000 for the council chambers renovations, which was unbudgeted there. We've also received an LG cap. I believe that's a climate related grant of $60,000, which wasn't budgeted. And then on the adverse side, or the offsetting side, we haven't received an installment on our gas tax, which we will receive typically in the latter half of the quarter four. So that'll make up the difference there. So our grants will be on budget. Sorry, we will be over budget because of those unbudgeted grant pieces there. Moving into the expense side, staffing, we're expecting to be actually under budget because of the vacancies in financial services and legislative services throughout the first 3 quarters. And any budget will be reassigned to the 2024 budget to reduce salary requirements. The other budget that is seeing some pressure is the information technology budget. Here it presents as we're doing fine, but I see some pressure there for the year end where we've got some unbudgeted software licensing costs and some unbudgeted costs outside of our current managed services contract that may pressure that budget at year end. Any questions?
I'm curious to know if the parking revenue shows up yet in revenues.
It does not. It doesn't show up in this budget. It'll show up later in the presentation. The next slide is on council's budget. We've got some grant revenues there that we should realize in terms of the council to council meetings that we've been having throughout 2023. And at some point we will actually file a claim to receive that grant revenue. We're forecasting the councillor indemnities to be slightly over budget by the end of the year due to a higher CPI adjustments. Council expenses, which include general meeting expenses, our strategic planning, technical support and conference travel costs. We're forecasting those to be on budget or under budget by the year end. So we see no other concerns in this particular council's budget to the end of the year. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
I just want to read that right, that council expenses, we have a budget remaining 50,000. Does that include all of the travel that we did for the, recent meetings? Is that actual what's left in that budget?
So the large portion of the UBCM convention costs were actually posted in Q4. And that's I'll end there for now. That's all the way up to slide 97, and then I'll start on 98.
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Ms. Bonner. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be presenting on the Community Services Division, which Council will be familiar with. I won't go through all of these. I think I've rattled off this list before. I have just under 40 slides, so I'll try and move quickly through them without speaking too quickly. So first up, culture and events, both community hall revenue and filming fees are coming in with higher revenues than what was budgeted for. And that's just due to the return of events and interest in having events in the community hall. So rental revenue there is up. You can see 114 rental requests. We've staffed that now with a facility supervisor who's a part-time person in the hall, about roughly 29 hours a week to help support the evening and weekend use and meet those demands. And film permits, while it's higher than what was budgeted, we actually think that it would have been higher if it wasn't for the writer's strike, because we did see not quite as many productions as we typically do. Community Children's Center is currently 21 families as of Q3, supported with care at the center. We do see a decrease in enrollment during the summer months. 5 families graduating to kindergarten and 4 new families coming into the center in the fall. We're not fully staffed, and so that has impacted the hours that we are open. So right now the day ends at 4 o'clock, whereas normally we'd be going till 5 or 5:30. So that does impact revenues as well as not being fully staffed. We cannot accommodate the full capacity of the center quite frequently. Recreation, we're on track to exceed the budgeted revenues in recreation as of the end of the year. The grants and donations is showing lower than anticipated, and that's because while we applied for and received the Canada Summer Jobs Grant, we were not able to hire a student. So we ended up not being able to take advantage of that grant. We ended up just hiring a temporary summer programmer. Not shown on here, but of note that maybe of interest to council is the Kids Access Fund. So the requests at the end of Q3, we've had 37 requests to the Kids Access Fund, higher than in years past. And so total request of about $5,400. And that is funded through fundraising and donations and that type of thing. Parks Recreation Strategic Plan, that is scheduled to begin in Q4. So no expenses as of Q3. On to planning. So the development approvals grant is the grants and donations there where there's looks like a large variance, and that's just that's funds that we received but will be transferred into the revenue GL at the end of the year, and that's for the development approvals project. I think that has a slide on that coming up, so I won't go into too much detail there. Mackenzie Creek study, that is now underway in Q4, working with Redfish to study the area around Mackenzie Creek. Mobile population census also underway now in Q4 with the return of the manager in that department from leave, but no expenses as of Q3. Development approvals framework, this work is largely complete with the final piece being the implementation of the online application portal which through PSD Citywide, which is the software we're using for business licensing, asset management as well. Environmentally sensitive areas report. So this contract has been combined with the Mackenzie Creek study as there's some similarities in scope. And so that is also underway in Q4 with Redfish Consulting. Bylaw services. So we've exceeded the revenue projected through licenses and permits, and that's largely because of increased business licensing revenue. And staffing is the lower expenses that we would see normally there, just due to staff changes and vacancies in that department. Business licensing, you can see the year-over-year stats there. So an increase, 773, that was as at the end of Q3. So there may be a few more now, and exceeding the revenue anticipated for business licensing. Bylaw notices, I have some more detailed stats that I'll get into after this, but generally there's the breakdown of warnings and fines issued in 2023 versus other years. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about the priorities that council set earlier in the year and do a bit of reporting out on those. And just as a refresher, in 2022, council passed a resolution amending our bylaw enforcement policy to reflect the complaint-based approach, which was consistent with how the enforcement had been happening, but was not, the bylaw was not consistent. And a couple of meetings there with some background information from council, and then at a closed council meeting in April, council established the 2023 enforcement priorities, which I'll go into in the next slides. So one was the garbage and attractant management, and of course we're still waiting for the wildlife attractant bylaw to have received ministry approval. There were 4 complaints about garbage, and at this point, officers are not really, going door to door and seeking non-compliant bins and that type of thing. And it was the beginning of the rollout of this program. And one was referenced as an animal attractant. So continuing to work with WildSafe on that, and hopeful that the bylaw will come into effect in the new year. With regard to animal complaints, there were 4 investigations regarding dog bites, aggressive dogs at large. A complaint, or several complaints, but one instance of regarding chickens, and 1 complaint and investigation regarding a cat at large.
It's one aggressive chickens.
The cat, it's kind of a cute story, was actually wandering around, getting trapped or trapping itself into a local business in the evenings and then breaking into eat pet food. Beach patrol night fires, alcohol, etc. We were helped again by the provincial fire ban through most of the summer. So that we saw a really low number of fires at all. Most of the ones that were identified were compliant. A few in the fall now that we're getting into the colder season where people seem to be unaware of the requirements. I have a very unscientific stat list, which I've not included in the slides, around dogs on beaches with, and it's based on officer patrol notes. So it's per beach, per month, how many are on leash and how many are off. Keep in mind, they're not on the beaches all the time. So this is just based on the instance they were able to log. And so there was a total of, out of 671 dogs throughout the summer months, 42%, I'll just give you the aggregate number, 42% were on leash. So just less than half. Short-term rentals, 3 investigations into illegal short-term rentals. And so not out of compliance, but illegal short-term rentals with 1 ticket issued. The other 2 are quite recent actually, and are currently under investigation. And then 4 investigations regarding out of compliance. So that's maybe an extra room, or you're supposed to have a caretaker, but you don't have one. And so 1 ticket has been issued, compliance met since, and then 3 had voluntary compliance. So usually the first move is a phone call or reaching out to the property owner to make them aware that they're operating out of compliance. And in this case, 3 of them came into compliance voluntarily right away. And the summer reservist program, we had 1 officer, again, same officer we've had for a number of years now through June, July, and August. We had a significant challenge finding accommodation and ended up having to put the officer up in a hotel who gave us a great rate, but accommodation expenses did eat into the budget significantly. This program does continue to be vital though for the beach patrols and after hours enforcement, as they just have a skill set and that our officers simply don't have. That's all I have for bylaw statistics, and I wanted to take this opportunity to just let council know that this is something we're building on and want to provide more statistics on. If there's anything particular that council is looking for in terms of statistics, perhaps at a future meeting when bylaw priorities are set, then I'd be happy to have that feedback. Emergency planning. And no significant variances here, except in emergency planning projects, you'll see that we've spent a little bit less than what was budgeted. And there's a number of projects underway, audibility assessments for tsunami sirens, and I'll talk about that in a future slide. But this budget amount is significantly made up by a budget that was allocated for the vertical evacuation tower. And Mr. Orchardson is going to be speaking about that project a little further on in the presentation. And currently that project is sitting with infrastructure as an infrastructure project. Tsunami siren audibility review. This, not a lot of expenses, no expenses actually, reading the slide in Q3, but this work was underway in October, and there will be one more audibility test likely in the new year. And this is to determine what the next likely location or recommended location is for a future siren, which is budgeted for in 2024. Building inspection, the contract revenue that's listed there is because the inspector does do 1 day currently in Ucluelet. And the transfer from reserve, there's nothing showing for actuals there because that's an adjustment that's made at the end of the year. EOC building safety upgrades. So these are now substantially complete. There's a couple of handrails and things that need some tinkering, but this is the stair replacement to go to the upper floor of that building. And that was something that was badly needed for the replacement of those stairs. So that's now complete. Municipal hall renovations. So this project has been kind of going on for a while through the year. We have spent some of the budget, and that's on design. We're still working through the mechanical. The mechanical design is for the entire building. And to refresh, renovating this room, it's very difficult to do unless you cut into these radiators on the side, which are connected to the entire building. And so it's quite an effort, quite a design exercise to design the HVAC system for this building. And mechanical engineers are very, very busy, it seems right now. And so we're just trying to move this along, but very likely this project will be fully carried over to 2024. RMI, I think council is familiar with the program, so I won't go into too much detail there, but just I'll go through some of the RMI projects. Tofino Theatre venue improvement. As most of us have heard, the theater is embarking on an exciting renovation, which I understand they're having a small celebration or kickoff for this evening next door. So we may hear that starting shortly. And the renovation is to start, as far as I understand, tomorrow. Tofino Free Shuttle. So this project, you can see year-to-date actuals there. So that would have been as of the end of September. So the bulk of this is the summer service. And we do a little bit of supporting events in the shoulder season with shuttles. So there will be a few more expenses, but not many to this budget. And we extended the service this year to Long Beach, 3 runs a day. And so I have a little bit of information I can share here. So 2020, you'll see there was a pause due to COVID, and we understood no one was about to get on a bus with a whole bunch of other people at that time. So we paused the service. And so we're slowly starting to see a return to pre-COVID levels in ridership, but it still is lower than it was pre-COVID. The average riders per day was approximately 330 passengers. And with 3 runs to Long Beach, we were seeing a few dozen folks take advantage of that service going out that way. And so there were stops in Tayasanas, Esawista, and Long Beach. And we're hoping to continue that next year, and staff is actively seeking grant funds to see that service expanded. Multi-use path upgrades. So this project is slightly over budget. This is one of the older sections of multi-use paths. So this is just north of Tree Frog Lane, and it was one of the older sections of multi-use path. There were a couple of culverts that were not picked up on the survey, nor were they on our record drawings, but of course we had to replace those as part of the project. There's also a hydrant that was replaced that was not part of the original scope. So this one is slightly over, and this project's fully funded by RMI. Tonquin Bridge replacement. We've lost our fish window on this, so this project will be carried over. The construction phase of this project will be carried over to 2024. due to the proximity to the stream. And the engineer design is now complete for the bridge structures. And so we're working to see that project out to the market in the new year. Neil Street and Village Green improvements. This is a very visible project downtown, and the water main is complete. The project is tracking on budget. Unfortunately, the court itself is not to be paved until the new year, and that's just to ensure that we do get a good quality pave on the court. Just running into the colder temperatures, there's a risk of not a great quality result, and we weren't willing to waive our warranty or anything like that on the project. Cox Bay washrooms, this only $788 had been spent as of the end of Q3, but this project is now well underway. And if you're in the Maltby Road parking lot, you will see construction happening there. Fire department, no significant variances here. Next slide is a little more exciting where it talks about the call volume. So again, 181 for first responders. The structure fires I did talk about in Q2. One was a minor sort of planter fire, and the other two were calls to leave the district to support a mutual aid in UQ-led, but we're stood down. And last slide for me is fire equipment upgrades. So this was partially grant funded. This is the sets of turnout gear and new VHF radios. So now in Q4, we have the turnout gear and we're just waiting on radios and pagers to replace old ones. Happy to answer any questions. If anyone has some.
I just have a question, and it's regarding the last slide with the call volumes for our volunteer fire department and the breakdown of 181 for first responders. And I don't know if you have any details on those first responder calls, but it strikes me there's a conversation that we've already been engaged with the province where we pick up sort of the, I won't say slack, but lack of a better description, for those first responder calls, which in fact, DHS would be the primary responding agency. And I'm wondering if there's been any further conversation with the province regarding that at this point.
I think it's definitely something we're aware of, and particularly with a volunteer department. This is not a staff fire hall that where staff are paid to sit and wait for the bell to ring, if you will. I may defer to the CAO around conversations with the province. Do you have anything to add there?
Sure. Thank you. Through the chair, we are having a regional discussion on this matter with other municipalities.
Yes.
Regional.
Thank you.
There'll be more to come to count on.
Thank you. I forgot. Great. Thank you, April.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, I will introduce Mr. Rogers.
And if I could ask for, well, I have chair, I can hear, a 2-minute break, way too much tea. We can be back at 17:35.
And muting. Thanks once again. Today I'll be presenting on infrastructure and public works. I'll be covering the operational slides. The first one's about paid parking, so we might spend some time there, and then work through public works, water and sewer. Mr. Kirkman's going to step in and take care of the project slides, which is the bulk of the presentation. And then following up that, we'll have the Mr. Orchardson and Mr. Kriba introduce us to asset management. Who are we? We're infrastructure and public works. We take care of the infrastructure of the district, as well as the operation of that infrastructure. And once in a while, we get special projects like water conservation, paid parking, waste, and climate change. So paid parking, this is what we knew as of Q3, and obviously it'll look a little bit different now that the programs, downtown programs closed for the year. And I may dig into this just a little bit and probably focus largely on the revenue and the expenses in the downtown areas. That's where we're seeing the largest impacts to this budget. But before I do that, I just wanted to say the revenue from the beaches will meet or exceed our budget by the end of the year. That's on a year where we've seen less users, but due to our increasing the increase of the rates that we programmed in at the beginning of the year, we'll actually see a larger revenue amount. In the downtown core, we're seeing significantly lower revenues than we expected. A couple of reasons. I couldn't tell you exactly which is the most impactful, but obviously we had less spaces than we expected due to a fair amount of construction in the downtown core. We had a very late start, and obviously with the fires and the road closures, resident passes impacted somewhat, though I'm not certain it was that much. It was our first year, so that revenue projection was a little bit of a guess, but a little bit was a guess. And again, there was a slower year overall. You know, as we can see through the beaches, the revenue that we received from the beach parking program. In the downtown area, if we look at the August, October months rather than the whole year, we can say that downtown usage is about, transaction wise, is about half of what the beaches are. So going forward next year, we'll be able to provide some more detailed projections about what that might look like next year. So I have to say about this. So for next year, one thing we may want to think about is, again, increasing rates in the downtown core. We came in at a pretty low rate this year at the beginning of the program. It may be something to think about to align with the beach rates to drive up those revenues. As well, we're going to see the addition of a number of spaces next year and a longer year. So I would expect next year to be a little bit different and probably about half of what we pull in terms of revenue from the beach parking based on this first year, which was again a bit of an odd year. In terms of revenue, we see quite high in 2023. That's largely due to the one-year contract we signed for the downtown. In the previous contract we signed for the beach parking, we amortized the cost of our kiosks over 3 years because we wanted to get this in place and we wanted to line up these programs. We amortized the cost of those kiosks over 1 year. So we're seeing higher rates there. As those kiosks can get paid off in the coming years, we're going to, and in a very few years, we're going to see significantly less expenses in the program. So that's what we know about parking. I can say, looking at some of the numbers past Q3, we'll probably see about another $100,000 in revenue by the end of the year. Just make sure I didn't miss anything here. Does anybody have any questions about paid parking?
It's really related to the presentation, but does the paid parking end at some point? Is it like end of November or something?
This year we ended the downtown paid parking on October 15th. We bagged up all the signs, and so we haven't seen any revenue since that date, which would be 15 days after this happened. So there wouldn't be not many revenues coming through that stream. Beach parking is year round.
Okay, thanks.
I think
Mayor, through the chair, did Robbins provide any detailed information about the residents in paid parking spots or offshore residents in paid parking spots, et cetera, et cetera? So maybe we can in downtown specifically, so we can understand a little bit more detail on why those revenues were so much lower besides the obvious.
Yeah, I haven't drilled down to that level with them. We've talked about issues in terms of violations, and they saw very few violations downtown. Actually, they were surprised how easy the year was for them. And so we've had some comments back and forth with the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation and House First Nation about issues in those spots. But we haven't heard a lot of complaints that was at least directed to myself from Robbins. The way that it works with anything that's not just a simple ticket tends to go through myself, and I haven't heard much about it a year. So it seemed to go fairly smoothly. It's something I can see if I can get them to pull data down on a resident pass. They provided just a brief update of sort of just the cost, basically. Yeah. It seemed from their perspective, it went very smoothly this year.
Yeah, it's more of a comment. I'll have more questions at Q4 at the end, and I think it might be a time, and I don't know if this was incorporated in, where we might have a directed conversation, or this is the first year of the downtown paid parking and some of the issues that came up. That may be something that we have as a separate report in and of itself that we can speak. Maybe it's in a committee of the whole, we can have a more fulsome conversation after we get the flow of that data. You've had conversations with Robbins, and then we can have that more in-depth conversation about the paid parking at that time.
Yeah, I think I could spend an hour at least.
Yeah.
On a pretty detailed breakdown of what happened.
Yeah.
I think for sure, moving forward, it'll be a great idea. This is just a bit of an odd year, but I would like to really sort of tweak it for next year and see what happens. But I can definitely spend a time with Robbins to try to get some more of that detail and work with the CAO on when that presentation they want to come to council. Yeah, I think it's going to be it's a good revenue source for us. And I think it did what it was expected to do, which was to free up spaces. So we didn't hear any complaints. I didn't hear any complaints this year about people not being able to find parking for the first time in many years. And so I think it was successful in those two matters. And I think we were a pretty good handle on it moving forward and what that might look like in terms of expanding the area in the years to come. There's no plans for next year for expansion, but we'll pick up some spaces around Neil Street and where there was stuff, a couple of areas, and then obviously that conversation with the province at some point about Highway 4.
Yeah, just sort of following up on the idea of having that more detailed look at the parking. Since it's further on, it's after Q4. I wouldn't mind seeing the expenses broken out beach downtown, just so to understand the whatever expenses, which were kiosks and signage and stuff that were new, and what were other kind of expenses.
I think I could potentially provide that thing right now to have. If you're interested, I could.
It doesn't matter right now. I think when we have a look at that big picture and start maybe, redesigning it a little bit, I suppose tweaking it for next year. It would be good to know that kind of stuff.
Great. And don't know, I guess maybe perhaps at a future budget meeting, I could spend some time on that maybe. Yeah. Great. So on to public works. Not really a lot to report in any of my slides, actually. Things are tracking along as expected, and for the most part. The largest variance here is just in the grants, and again, that's just a function of when we receive these grants. So we're expecting the $220,338 is half of the Mackenzie Beach Road grant. We'll expect the other half once we start the project or complete the project. So that's the largest piece there. There's also we're not seeing a grant from the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure for the Olsen Road project because we're not moving forward with it this year. There's a surf rider grant that I think believes in a different jails that needs to be moved over here. So that budget, even though right now in Q3 it looks a little bit off, is actually tracking well. We saw a little bit more costs in facilities and structures and parks and trails, but nothing too concerning in the big picture. So happy with where we're at in public works right now. In terms of this slide, the only item that I will draw to council attention to is the facilities and structures line item. That is the unspent funds there are largely related to kitchen renovations and the roof replacements, which are roof sure we moved to 2024. And the parks and trails line item is to do with our Egg Street tree redesign, some park structures, and some of this work is going to be occurring in Q4 and some of it next year. And then finally, we didn't see a lot of expenses on our trails this year because most of them were largely, well, the Tonkin trails were largely closed for most of the year due to the wastewater treatment plants. We didn't see a lot of expenses that we would normally see there. Does council have any questions about public works?
Yeah, through the chair. I had a question about some of the Tonquin trails that are closed and that will be getting rebuilt as well once they're able to be open safely. Will the rebuilding budget come out of Public Works or other projects that are affecting those trails?
As I understand it, and please anybody in this room, who's not me, the funds for the redevelopment of the trails will be related to the projects that cause it. So for the section between Public Works and the community hall, that'll be addressed through the wastewater treatment plant project. And then I believe the Tofino Housing Corporation project will be on the dime of the Tofino Housing Corporation. That's either as the trail goes through it. I don't know, it's Vermont if we're going through it or we're gonna go around it again.
Yeah, just in advance of construction, the trail reroute was somewhat redesigned, just to have less of a footprint and save some costs, and so it just skirts the THC development now, so, but they are on the hook, as you say, for remediating.
Okay, and then will that trail become part of district property? Or would it be considered part of the Catalyst property?
I think I can answer that. So it continues to be on the remainder of that district lot, and I believe we have or are entering into a statutory right of way for the section that does go through their property.
All right,
So it will remain public.
cool, thank you.
And I just have a quick question, Aaron. On Parks and Trails with $100,000 budget remaining, and doesn't sound like too much for Q4. Your bottom line item on the Public Works there. What happens with the excess again? If you could just remind me, does it go into general surplus, or how does that, in essence, over budget?
I'll answer with part A and then maybe part B to Ms. Bonner or Ms. Gianna. So part A of the answer is that sometimes these are projects that we'll reallocate the funds to next year. So for example, the Ike Street tree and the park structures that we didn't get done this year will be budgeted from this amount in 24. So that's the one way we do it. And then if there's remaining funds, we
Chair, we reassign the budgets as Mr. Rogers spoke to the next year's budget, and any excess would go to surplus.
Thank you. And question from Councillor Thomas.
I did not have my hand up.
Okay, sorry. Just had a note here. Great, thank you.
Yeah, there's no questions and answers.
Okay.
It's a Q&A.
All good.
Great. Well, if there's no further questions on the operating budget here, I will hand over the project to Mr. Berkman.
Mr. Rogers. Mayor and Council. So the first project under the general public works section is Mackenzie Beach Full Road repave. So we have the final design has been completed. The project's gone through the tendering process. And we are assembling contract documents to award to the preferred proponents. So we're planning the December 12th council meeting. We'll be coming with a report to council looking to award that contract, and we're looking at commencing that work early 2024, so sometime mid-January. We're just finalizing some environmental impact assessments in the area, so we can plan out for those culvert replacements in Mackenzie Creek. Any questions on this project? The next one is the Arnett Road storm improvements. So this is Arnett near Cedar Street and where it turns into Tonquin Park Road. So we were having some budgetary constraints with pricing that we did receive earlier. We do have some updated pricing that we did receive from a local civil contractor. So we are finalizing a revised project sheet. We're planning to, likely it'll be early 2024 at this point. We're going to award the contract though late 2023. Again, this will be another report to council on the planned December 12th council meeting. And this is not a long duration for the scope of work. The construction is anticipated to be completed early 2024. And the next one is the Olson Road storm main. Still no year to dates really on this one. Still under review. We do have a final design on it. We're waiting for some responses from MOTI and how we finalize some additional funding that would be allocated from them. Likely we'll be tendering this sometime in the first 2 quarters of 2024. And then asset management, I won't speak too much, but the team, we have been progressing the program at a very good pace, and they are looking forward to providing. Mr. Orchison and Mr. Krebs over here are looking forward to providing a good update here today, the latter end of this presentation. And then Bay Street Access Road, which is investigating or looking to pursue an actual district right-of-way access to our Bay Street water treatment plant. Right now, where staff are accessing the location through private property. We've received an initial preliminary design with some costing, and we're further reviewing the feasibility. So probably won't see too much further on that for 2023. But we'll give another update in the Q4 presentation. And then the west float replacement down at the wharf at the bottom of First Street. That has been completed pretty close to the project budget over the 2022-2023 fiscal years. As everyone can see down on with the nice freshly painted handrails. Emergency egress improvements and the actual west float that's provided for the Housat residents down there. And then First Street dock improvements. So there's some various improvements that are ongoing down there. We do have upgraded lighting installed. The expenses I don't believe have been realized in Q3 as of yet, but for public safety and upgrading some of the lighting standards down there, we're up to electrical code with some exposed wires and all those kind of things. That has been completed at this time. And then in the future, we're going to continually, through condition assessments, look for other improvement opportunities to the wharf down at the bottom of the First Street dock. And then fleet management. So several council meetings ago, we received the approval to proceed with working with Enterprise for a fleet management program for the district. So currently we have not allocated a significant amount past that in Q3, but we are negotiating the terms of the contractual relationship with the vendor Enterprise. And we are still working towards the allocation or the purchasing a new dump truck. But in terms of procurement, that's been pushed out into 2024 due to delayed procurement on that. And then the vertical evacuation tower, which has migrated over to the infrastructure realm, we are working with our engineering consultants on phasing out pre-design for that project, which starts with geotechnical investigation. So we're looking at several different options of how we can have an approach to deliver what this is going to look like. And Mr. Orchison is going to touch on that slightly during the asset management presentation as well. And then to the water fund, so I'll hand this back off to Mr. Rogers here.
Very little report on the water fund. The one item is the grant contributions is related to the municipal natural asset initiative. And that project has not yet begun. We're just working on timing with our project partners. A lot of what we're going to look at on this slide is basically Q4 projects. So a lot of our work will happen through Q4. The exceptions being some reservoir inspections that didn't happen this year, partly due to the drought and emergency actions of the summer, or preparing for emergency actions. And something we're working with the asset management team on to make sure that we're undertaking those in the right time. So we'll see a little bit will be underspent in reservoirs, and then in water treatment. Similarly, we're working on a number of items in Q4 that we expect to get done. So the Q4 will be a better time to speak to those two items in particular. But other than that, I don't have any further information other than to say water lines. Basically, the Q4 is water lines. A lot of expenses related to tools, and we do a lot of our tool purchasing in Q4 when it's a little bit slower. So I would expect to see that line up with the actual line of the budget for Q4. And then there's no questions. We'll go back to Kirkland for projects.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Okay, so district water master plan is in progress. The year-to-date actuals will climb in Q4. So staff are working with McElhaney, the consulting firm that we have completing the master plan in collaboration. We're planning to have a draft plan in place for staff review by the end of 2023. And we're targeting the final plan by Q1 in 2024 with a report to council or committee of the whole presentation shortly thereafter, when you get the Q1 or Q2. So Mears natural capital asset, no expenses to date. Team staff have been working with various state or consultants, and then working with Tla-o-qui-aht to see what this is going to kind of shape up to be as we move forward. And we're expecting more development on this one in 2024. Remote monitoring and telemetry upgrades. So this is implementing instrumentation, so we're able to measure flow from our sources in a more real-time basis. So at this time, staff are sourcing instrumentation and defining the scope of work required to complete it. So not just purchasing instrumentation, but also building structures to actually house the instrumentation over there. We are targeting completion prior to summer 2024. So that's the team's goal, the staff's goal right now at this time. And that's that for water, and then move back to sewer. We're over to sewer now.
I think this is my last slide. There are only two items that I'd like to address. One being the sewer projects. That's at the bottom there. That's largely to do with our infiltration and is it I&I?
Inflow and infiltration.
Thank you. Inflow and infiltration project that's underway now. So expect to see some more expenses in there in Q4, and the same with some sewer line improvements as well. Sorry, there's not more exciting operational items to share, but I'm happy to go over this in Q4 again. No.
Sure, if it would show up in your presentation or somewhere else. I'm wondering if our budget for water revenues is severely impacted by conservation.
I don't think so. So when I look at the water revenues with my calculator, they seem to be matching up with what our projections were, and so if we're three quarters of the way through the year. But I have, this is my kind of second year at it, but I didn't notice anything that was amiss that would ask me to raise concerns with the finance department, but finance noticed any.
Yeah, through the chair, would that be because even though in the summer, whenever people are conserving more water, there just is more people in town conserving more water?
Exactly. Okay. In the end, I think we did an excellent job conserving as a community, but there's limits to how much we can conserve when we're inviting 4,000 or 5,000 more people into our community. I think it's the population that drives.
Yeah, so it's like 15,000 people using 30% of their daily water is the same as like whatever number of people using 100%.
I think every drop counts, obviously, in bird conservation, but I think, you know, when we're seeing our biggest revenues come through the summertime with the population, then it's not, I won't say minimal, but it's not as big of an impact as the amount of tourists that visit us. Yes, sir.
All right, so first sewer capital works project is the lift station generator replacements. So this is replacing the old propane generators that are located along the Lynn and Chesterman stretch. So as of Q3, we're at 28,000, so not significant amount of the project budget, but we do have the additional generators on site. So in Q4, the year-to-dates will be going up. And we're targeting installing the two diesel gen sets that are sitting in the public works yard, protected right now under tarps, I believe, by the end of 2023 or early 2024. Just have to install automatic transfer switch and the generators and commission do site SATs, site acceptance testing on them. Lift station isolation valves, so that was at two other lift stations along the Lynn and Chesterman stretch. That project has been completed. We did go 14,000 over budget on that one. Just there's some challenges with the unsuitable ground material that's in that area, largely due to all the fine sand that the area is built up on. Seventh forest main, so the South Tofino forest main, as we call it. We're still doing pre-design work on this one. We haven't really expended too much to date. There is a memo that we did receive, which I think the billing will just come through in Q4. Anyway, so we're trying to sort out if the South Tofino forest main either wants to get twinned, or if there's some upgrades that we can do to the existing infrastructure, such as potentially upgrading pump motor sizes, or potentially increase retention capacity in some of the wet wells that are there. So we are progressing this one, which is reviewing the proposed options down below there, which is pump capacity or wet well capacity. And we're hoping to present a little bit more in the Q4 report, or in 2024. We'll see that progressing early on.
Yeah, you may have just answered, but I was just curious as to when you look at those potential upgrades, you know, in terms of growth down the road, you know, you're looking at what is the realities of our growth down the road, and if twinning it is more cost efficient in the long run as opposed to those upgrades. So anyways, we'll probably hear more, it sounds like, coming up.
Yeah, through the chair, that's a good question, Councilor Steer. We think we have enough that's within the pipe diameter that's already there that could handle any growth capacity, you know, reviewing the OCP for that area. It's a matter of if twinning, and then, you know, thinking about if there's any potential impacts to any of the private pumping infrastructure as well. So that's a big part of the assessment as well.
I don't want to digress too far, but that would include conversations with TFN, I would take it, in terms of growth out at that end of the very south.
Through the chair, yes, that is absolutely correct. And then seeing how we can work with what infrastructure they have in place already. Make sure there's a balance to it. Yeah. Any other questions on this one? Thank you. And then the wastewater treatment plant. So I'll present kind of progress, milestones, risks, some of the call it the progress on the commercial side, and then I'll hand the financials over to Ms. Bodner once I get into it. Excuse me. So it's a relatively recent photo taken about a month ago by one of our staff members on the infrastructure team who's not here tonight. That's a great photo showing the kind of the magnitude of the project and how much it's progressed since the Q2 presentation. So high level update on what we've progressed in terms of construction since the Q2 report for presentation. So the integrated fixed film activated sludge diffuser aeration system has been installed, which I'll show a photo of shortly. The secondary clarifier mechanisms and bridges have been installed. We're planning on placing the grout topping to that base slab next week. The mechanical building interior works are progressing, drywall, mudding, taping, insulation. And with that, the mechanical building is also sealed and heated for winters. So especially with electrical equipment, you want to make sure you got dry heat that's going in there, so you're controlling the humidity so you don't damage any of the components prior to startup and commissioning. So that's ongoing. It's a warm building in there. The headworks building, interior works is progressing. We still need to put the roof on. We have the equipment showing up for the headworks later this week, so that's a massive milestone. We have pump installations going on at various locations throughout the facility. The variable frequency drives or VFDs and starter sections of the MCCs are delivered to site. So that's all the power that will actually power the motors in the pumps. Kind of like the electrical, the power electrical brains of the operation, not the controls, the electrical. And then pipe racks installations are ongoing. Part and parcel of that is all the cable tray racks that are installed throughout to convey all the piping and the electrical. And then we also have the new 3-phase BC Hydro service installation ongoing currently at the moment. Tracking potentially into November completion for that, if not for the end of the year. We'll get to the milestones shortly anyways. So there's a photo of the BC Hydro 3-phase service installation. So putting up the dead end pole just outside of where the wastewater treatment plant is. So service will drop down, go underground where it enters the facility, kind of underground throughout all the trees and stuff to kind of mitigate any overhead power line risks. We get a fair amount of wind out here. This is the upper maintenance deck platforms in the headworks building. So the equipment that's showing up later this week where we've left the roof off intentionally. There's going to be a lift with a crane to drop all the equipment in place into this location. So this is the screening and grit removal equipment. So it takes out the rags and grit out of the influent raw sewage. Here's the IFAS reactor system. So these are the diffusers that blow oxygen into the primary kind of treatment part, the IFAS, the integrated fixed film activated sludge part of the treatment. So blows oxygen in, keep all the little bugs alive so they can start eating up the sludge, clumping it together, starting that first settlement process in the train. Here's some preparations for the topping for the secondary clarifier. There's a concrete topping that goes on top of here. You actually kind of use the mechanism to place the concrete. So you have the concrete placed at the correct tolerance. We can get into more details if anyone has any questions later about that. This is up top, so operator access bridge. So you can see there's a gearbox or a motor up at the top there that drives the mechanism down below around in circles. You can see the green launders on the outside, that's where the effluent or the almost the secondary treated liquid is removed. The sludge or the solids is removed from the bottom of the tank. This is the center walkway pipe rack, so all the stainless steel piping that conveys all the various forms of liquids kind of goes through this chaseway. On the outsides, on the ears of it, you see the cable tray, which is where all the electrical distribution cabling is installed, tech cabling. Here's just an exterior photo of the mechanical building. You can see a couple concrete pads in the forefront of the photo. Very far left is an odor control unit. Next one's for a generator pad. Then we have a pad mount transformer, which is where the BC Hydro service enters the facility. This is the motor control centers, the MCCs. These are the units that power all of the motors in the facility. This is inside the electrical room. This photo was taken the week before last, I believe. Up here, so this is the centrifuges. So this is the jewelry that will take all of the sludge from the bottom of the tanks, basically dry it out, and then discharge it down into disposal bins down below, where it will be hauled to the West Coast landfill, to their Woodrow system, where they will process the biosolids. This is a photo of exterior overhead coiling door, so just kind of showing the fact that the building's enclosed. Just thought it was a nice kind of like clean looking finished product there, so put that photo in there. Then so I'll break it out here. So here's the conveyance progress updates. So over at Warren Way, essentially the foot of Industrial Way, the leak testing on the wet well has been completed. The fourth main installation up the Warren Way municipal right of way has been completed. Right now, we're actually backfilling the wet well, or crews are, I should say. The gravity sewer installation at Arnett Road is largely complete. We do need to make one more critical water main crossing, which we're just finalizing the second phase of that with the contractor right now, where the gravity main will go underneath one of our water mains on Arnett and cross into Centennial Park, where it'll discharge into the Centennial Park pump station. And the Centennial pump station installation is largely completed. There's still kiosk and a generator, electrical controls kiosk and a generator, which is scheduled to arrive, and then just tying it in with the linear works as well. Tonquin connector works slated for completion on Friday. It's largely complete. We are going to hold for a little bit longer. We do want to complete some outstanding general parks or trails maintenance on it before it reopens, and just give the contractor a little bit more time just to we're placing some of the fallen trees in some strategic locations just to make sure that we allow that natural revegetation to occur properly. The wharf pump station backfill is pretty well complete. There's one more tie-in we need to do at that location before we come online next year, where we take all of the sewage from the First Street grinder station, where we can convey that sewage or bypass it over to the wharf pump station. Main Street backfill is essentially complete now. It's a little bit of cleanup work to do around it, but the asphalt has been installed now. We just await the odor control unit, the generator, and the electrical and controls kiosk to arrive. And then BC's hydro service connection designs are just being finalized right now in collaboration between WSP and BC Hydro. And then here's some photos. So it's a concrete placement. We're putting some benching, so sloping inside of the wet well at Warren Way. We have the preparations for the benching just behind here at Main Street. It's a similar construction to the wet well at Warren Way. We have over in the Arnett kind of community hall area, we have an effluent flushing chamber. So for the scheduled maintenance, which part and parcel with our asset management program, we'll have to flush out our outfall so it doesn't get covered in sediment, like they currently are. So, you know, it's giving the infrastructure means of being able to conduct preventative maintenance. It's pretty exciting because we don't currently have them. The wharf pump station, there's a photo of the reinstatement that's ongoing, the foot of First Street. Some of the progress for reinstatement along the Tonquin connector route. We essentially have a good service road that's all the way through there, so, and with the various air release valves and blow off valves in that area, so staff can actually access them with regular work vehicles to do preventative maintenance works. Outfall progress update. So the overland component is complete. It was encased in concrete. The in-water works are complete. They're basically complete when we did the Q2 update. Remaining installation is just the installation from the community hall to the end of Cedar Street is remaining. So just above the gravity sewer that was installed in that location. So not as deep or as invasive as what was previously done on our net. So here's a photo of the overland component of the outfall, which we had to encase in concrete and anchor into the bedrock. Here's just another view of that, but you can see, you can't really see the wording on it, but that's the new outfall sign there. And then it's a little smaller, but upcoming project milestones and some previous ones that we've passed. So we've completed the in-water outfall installations. We've got the BC Hydro pole and transformer installations ongoing, so bringing electrical service to the new facility. We are pretty close to being complete through the Tonquin connector corridor. Big milestone, we have submitted the operating certificate application to the MOE. We're first week of November, November 9th, essentially complete. And then we're liaising with the MOE staff for any additional information that they need. This is a bit of a dynamic sort of ongoing thing to address going through that process. We've completed the bulk civil works at Main Street, Warren Way, Wharf, and Centennial. So around all the pump stations, the bulk of moving of earth is completed now. We're just kind of getting into the fine grading and finish of the civil work. We'll move into the mechanical electrical work imminently. BC Hydro energization, we're targeting March 2024. Contractors indicating that they may be ready in January. So we're working with BC Hydro to see if we can actually realize that earlier milestone date. We're still tracking startup and testing of equipment for June 2024. What we're doing to ensure that the entire project's ready for that is we're establishing a project closeout committee. So different working groups to finalize things like process control narrative, working on standard operating procedures, finalizing what the commissioning plan is going to be. So that's called closeout steering committee, where it's meeting on essentially a bi-weekly basis, and that frequency will increase, and there'll be more pointed groups that will be, or working groups that will all be working together. So that's a good one. The MOE, the plan is to have the operating certificate in place by September 2024, because that's when we want to be close to completing our operational testing. So dialing in the treatment process, and then working towards having substantial completion in December of 2024, which is the baseline schedule still. So quick slide on remaining notable risks, and I'll speak briefly about mitigation measures. So staffing, it's challenging to find a level 3 operator. We do have an operator on staff who's a wastewater treatment level 2. We are engaging with an outside party to be named as the chief operator during initiation of the facility, and then working with the staff we have on hand to bring them up quickly to that level 3 wastewater treatment that we do need, and just making sure that they're supported. And then building up more fulsome, all of our staff, so everyone that works within our utilities group is aware of how the facility works and getting them into different education. So they get the various levels of wastewater treatment certifications completed. Schedule, slowly reducing risk, but it's always a risk with major deliveries, procurement of key process equipment. And on the contractor side, managing the work so that the schedule is logic driven and everything's arranged accordingly. So we're continually working with and communicating with the contractor to find where the different constraints lie and collaboratively working to remove those constraints to allow for continued work without disruption. Also plant and equipment startups, there's always a risk when you start up these greenfield facilities. So by establishing project closeout committee and planning for all these things up front a year in advance, we're able to mitigate risks associated with equipment startup. We've had some risks through the Tonquin connector with over excavation due to unsuitable soils. We've worked with the civil contractor to mitigate. We are through those now. I'm almost done. And then as with all major capital projects, working through various design changes, and we can see a light at the end of the tunnel there. If there's any questions, I don't think there probably is, but I will move on now. So I'll do really, really quick, I promise, on the NAC and WSP, and then I'll pass it off to Ms. Bodner here. So NAC, they've got 74% of their original contract value has been progressed. We're coming up close to 1% of the original contract value and change orders. Pretty good ratio in comparison to what typically happens on major projects in this industry. Changes are a result of just design changes, optimizations, and then, as previously stated, having a construction insurance policy instead of completely owner controlled policy. And then with WSP, as of Q3 reporting, WSP's 41% completed their budget. They've got some small design changes being managed through the change management process. And I'm sure everyone's sick of hearing my voice, so I'll pass this off to Ms. Bodner.
Well, the only thing I would add is
I know one more.
we need to schedule a site tour.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that's due, and I think let's schedule something offline and would look forward to having everybody out to site. Sorry, I do have one more slide. So project contingency, total contingency for the project was just over $7 million. At this time, we spent about just over $1 million on contingencies for various reasons. There's project insurance. We did a big chunk of that, about what am I gonna say, $350K or so was for purchasing a professional liability insurance to make sure that we're protected in terms of design errors and things like that. Some design changes and finalizations, as we did do a very accelerated design to get this project to construction. So some of the contingency was allocated for that. There was some additional paving quantities. There will be a little bit more, I mean, it's a very, the road infrastructure here is quite old. So some of the pavement was a little bit larger to replace than what we initially anticipated. As I stated earlier, in the Tonquin connector, we did in a low-lying area, we came through a bog, so there was a lot of additional soil that had to get removed there. Again, that was part of what we built up in the contingency. And then some of the smaller consultants for archaeological and environmental have expended some of the contingency to date. Now I can hand it off to Ms. Bodner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Griffith. So, the financial side of the wastewater treatment plant. I just want to lead council through the total grant funding for phase 1 and phase 2, just a little $77.5 million broken up between phase 1 and 2. That is allocated at 40% is federal, or 31 million. provincial 33.33% or 25.8 million. And then the District of Tofino is responsible for 26.67% of that 77 million or eligible costs, totaling $20.7 million. The ineligible costs, which we're responsible for, total just a little over $1.2 million. And the majority of those ineligible costs are actually due to staff costs that are directly assigned to the management and administration of this project. The other portion of these ineligible costs relate to legal, which have never been claimable under any major project like this. So the 26.67% of the eligible costs and the ineligible costs total just close to $21.9 million, of which we've got our funding sources of debt. We've got a loan authorization bylaw to borrow up to $16 million. And then we've received additional provincial funding from the province totaling $5.9 million. And the sum of those two funding sources are $21.9 million. So that kind of sets the stage for the funding of this project. And to September 30th, the total expenses for phase 1, phase 2, and ineligible costs, close to $51.9 million. We've received grant funding on that totaling $37.9 million. And the District of Tofino portion of phase 1, phase 2, and eligible cost to September 30th, total close to $14 million. And you see the breakdown of that there. The phase 1 project to September 30th is approximately 65% complete. And phase 2 is approximately 75% complete to September 30th. So to break down the funding sources for the District of Tofino portion, again, in the going from the left, the debt, the total funding sources are $16 million in debt. We've realized nearly $11.6 million in debt there, and we've got remaining of $4.4 million in funding remaining. Of the additional provincial funding of 5.9, the phase 2 project has utilized $1.9 million. So we have nearly $4 million remaining in that funding source. We've used CNI levy sewer related to phase 1. We've utilized $342,000 of that, as well as specific DCC's development contribution costs related to sewer for phase 1, close to $100,000. And these were in the early stages of the project. So the total funding sources of $22.3 million. We've spent close to $14 million to September 30th, remaining funding of $8 million. Any questions from council?
I would just, my understanding is, so roughly it would be 11 million, sorry, is we start the debt servicing costs on that as we spend it, and we start paying back as we speak. Would that be true?
We have borrowed $4 million in October, and in the form of temporary borrowing, and I will bring this back to council at a future time. We will be locking in long term in the fall borrowing. So we've missed the window. We did look at whether we should lock in, but recognizing that our interest rates are being fairly volatile, Miss Etienne and I determined that we will wait until the fall of 2024 to lock in our borrowing. and we'll have more certainty around that and some forecasters are actually saying that the long-term rates will drop. So that could be in our favor as well. All right, I think we're on to asset management.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Keith Orchiston, Asset Management Coordinator. Although I've been with the district since 2016, this is my first time presenting to Council in this role here. Previously, I was the Emergency Program Coordinator. And this is Will Kriba. He's the Asset Management Technician at the district, whereas I'm responsible for coordinating the development of the Asset Management Program, so policy, strategies, level of service, risk management, investment prioritization, life cycle analysis, all helping to build the capacity of the asset management planning within our organization. Will is responsible for the collection, inventory, and condition analysis of the district's existing and new assets. So I've realized that I've put a lot into this presentation. There's 30 pages, 30 slides. I will endeavor to keep this as quick as possible, but still keeping like the essence of the presentation here. So over the next 20 minutes or so, staff will be presenting an update on the asset management program. Presentation will look at what asset management is. Did someone change the slide for me? This guy. Oh, yeah, it just changed. I must have bumped it. What asset management is, the core elements, Tofino's journey of continuous improvement on asset management and the existing asset management systems. And a status update on where the asset management program is currently at, including project updates. So what is asset management? So asset management is a formalized and continual improvement process that integrates 4 key or core elements. So people, assets, information, and finances. And I'm sorry if you're familiar with this already. I didn't want to presume. So I'm just going to go quickly through the basis of asset management here. So asset management is the process of bringing together the skills and activities of staff in multiple departments with information about the community's engineered and natural infrastructure assets and financial resources to ensure long-term sustainable delivery, service delivery. Assets provide services that contribute to our quality of life. Sound asset management practices support sustainable service delivery by considering community priorities, informed by an understanding of the trade-offs between available resources, risk, and desired service levels. Sustainable service delivery ensures that current community services are delivered in a social, economic, and environmentally responsible manner that does not compromise the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So Asset Management BC has developed a framework or approach to asset management. I'm going to say asset management a lot. I might just say AM instead. That is based on international best practice and endorsed by BC local government practitioners. The framework provides a common system for understanding AM, the process, and provides strategic direction throughout this process. So there's no need to reinvent the wheel. It's basically what I'm getting at. One has been provided for us, as you'll see on the slide here. The wheel we're looking at is the sustainable service delivery wheel, which breaks the AM process down into assess, plan, and implement phases. This helps to ensure that the AM process is one of continuous improvement, which is a key concept of asset management and one that we can see throughout Tofino's asset management journey. It doesn't matter where you enter the wheel, because it all cycles around as well. Currently, we're in the assess, the plan, and the implement phases all at the same time. So looking at the wheel on the slide here, community sustainable service delivery lies at the center of this continuous improvement process, and it is the purpose and desired outcome of asset management. Infrastructure represents a significant investment for every local government, and council members are the stewards of local government's assets for current and future generations. So stewardship and sustainable service delivery requires more than just replacing assets when they get old. It's a process by which services to the community are provided in a way that fosters economic, social, and environmental well-being today and into the future. This process involves understanding, making informed decisions about trade-offs between delivering services, managing risk, and reducing costs throughout the life cycle of the asset. Balancing these trade-offs starts with community and land use planning and continues with design, procurement, operations, maintenance, asset renewal, and asset retirement. It includes recognizing and integrating natural assets that have a critical role in the delivery of core services and community well-being, and mitigating or adapting to climate change impacts that threaten sustainable service delivery. This process based around sustainable service delivery helps local governments achieve their primary purposes. So what is local government's key purpose? As you all well know, providing for good governance for our community, providing for services, laws, and other matters for community benefit, providing for stewardship of the community's public assets, and fostering economic, social, and environmental well-being of the community. So this is, in front of us here, there's some of the services that the district provides. It's not an exhaustive list. But you can see that there's multiple departments, stakeholders, and assets involved in delivering these services. Departments that deliver the services: public works and infrastructure, community services, including finance, planning, fire, and emergency operations and bylaw. Stakeholders that determine the level of service provided: council, residents, business owners, developers, landowners, rights holders, provincial and federal government, and visitors. Assets which enable services to be provided: engineered, which are designed and constructed components of infrastructure systems, so roads, wastewater treatment plants, and so on. Natural assets, which are ecosystems or natural resources that our community relies on for critical services and overall well-being: creeks, foreshore areas, forests, and so on, that provide drainage, flood protection, rain, water attenuation, just to name a few. So asset management is the integrated process of bringing together all of those components, including the skills, expertise, and activities of people, with information about our community's engineered and natural assets and finances, so that informed decisions can be made that support sustainable service delivery. So a little bit about Tofino's asset management journey. I spent a fair bit of time going through this, but there's a lot of work that's been done. There's really two major milestones. So again, this journey is one of continuous improvement, and I think a big thank you to the staff who have done work needed in the past to position our community as one of few in BC for our size to be relatively well equipped to deal with aging infrastructure and the costs of replacing assets. I've reached out to many communities who are just starting the process now of determining how they're going to replace assets. And a couple of major steps that we took here. The first major step Tofino took on its journey was the production of a financial report that provided information on its tangible capital assets and TCA policy. Tangible capital assets. The exercise looked at what Tofino spent on its infrastructure in the past, and the TCA policy in 2009 provided for control and accountability over capital assets, putting in place guidelines for accounting and amortizing the district's capital assets. This included establishing estimated useful lives of assets and collecting historical costs. It's all very important to start this journey for us. It's not necessarily a backwards looking process. That's what we can see up here. I don't know if you can see it, it's very small. But with tangible capital assets, you're looking back and you're saying, what did we spend on these assets? The next major milestone was a forward-looking report that was done by Urban Systems in 2017, the Asset Management Investment Plan. which was a financial analysis to determine what needs to be invested in infrastructure in the future. And again, you can see this relationship on the slide here. So the asset management investment plan, the AMIP, was such an important milestone for the district. It answered a number of key questions for the district's engineered assets that were critical in positioning us where we are today to be able to deal with the cost of aging infrastructure. What do we own? How much is it worth? What condition is it in? When does it need replaced? And how much do we need to invest? The AMIP also provided an updated, improved estimate of useful life of our assets and a comprehensive assessment of the replacement costs and estimated timing of replacement for the district's water, wastewater, storm, road, buildings, parks, and fleet assets. Again, such a big step for the district in terms of better financially understanding our assets, current replacement costs, useful lives, investment requirements. And it also identified core infrastructure that staff will begin with for developing asset management plans. So if you look on the slide here, 84% of Tofino's infrastructure, the value of our infrastructure is in water, sewer, storm, and road. So those are the asset classes that we'll start with first in developing asset management plans. Excuse me. The question of how much are our assets worth? You can see here that our asset value has increased significantly from 2014 to 2017. And again, it'll increase again here with 2023 numbers. The numbers aren't really the key point within what the assets are worth. The real key point is that we were able to define the core services and that's part of the strategy moving forward. What is the current condition of our assets? So I'll just skip forward here quickly because we're not going to go through all of this, but you can see in this slide here, at the time when this report was done, our understanding of our asset condition, we didn't have a good understanding of it. So we use an age-based proxy, which is basically just saying that, like, for example, this PVC sanitary main was installed in 1985. It has a 100-year useful life on it. So it's, 40-ish years old. It has 60 years remaining in it. It gives you a first sort of a first understanding of the condition of an asset, but it's not a physical condition assessment where you can actually get more componentized than just the actual PVC pipe and look at the fittings, the valves, to get a better idea, because those are made out of different material and they're going to have different useful lives than the actual PVC pipe. So there's sort of room for improvement with the AMIP. I did want to just sort of again sort of point out one of the key pieces of this as well is that this report informed how much money that we're setting aside for capital acquisition and renewal. And again, in talking with other communities, this is such a huge thing that we've been able to do here in Tofino, and it's the maturity level that it shows in our asset management practices is again something to be commended. Let's skip through here. So Tofino's existing AM practices, just to recap here, on our continuous improvement journey, our existing AM practices have been mostly financial in nature, because the lead for all this journey has been through our finance department, and again, produced with the best data and process at the time. Our asset register was developed for TCA reporting. Again, that's a financial report. And it's based on historical costs and age-based condition. Performance measures were not put in place again because we're looking at sort of financial reporting. We haven't currently integrated natural assets into our asset management program. And we're somewhat reactive to infrastructure failures, which require crisis management and emergency response. Where the asset management program is going, Mayor and Council have provided direction to staff to complete and implement an asset management program in 2021 and 2023 strategic plan. Specific areas of priority are understanding location, inventory, condition, cost, and maintenance. The strategic plan also directed staff to complete a natural asset management plan once the AM program is developed. Moving forward, staff will use Asset Management BC's Sustainable Service Delivery Framework to implement the core AM practices that spread the responsibility of asset management throughout the whole organization. So not just one department or one person. As the services we provide shown earlier in the presentation require multiple departments, stakeholders, and assets to deliver them. Training and responsibilities will be identified and documented. Our asset register will be componentized to the maintenance level. So again, talking about not just talking about sort of a financial understanding of the asset, but a maintenance level understanding of it. Current replacement costs, physical condition, and risk assessments will inform our levels of service and investment portfolio. Natural asset management and climate resiliency will be integrated in our AM program. This is a forward-looking program to ensure maximum value from assets are realized and sustainable service delivery is attained. And it makes me excited to say that. Quickly, yeah, we'll skip over here.
We're gonna skip over it. So just gonna quickly touch base on like what we're trying to do. And Keith talked about it was the componentization of the inventory and having like a central spot for the cross departments to kind of have one central system. The inventory that's in the TCA currently was a great starting point for us to move into this software implementation, and it allowed us to see some holes where there was inventory that was getting missed or wasn't important in that aspect. And we can bring that into the inventory because it affects a lot of that stuff. Next one. This is one more. Yeah, kind of touch base on that. The big realization was that because the inventory that the district had currently was that it wasn't necessarily used by all departments for maintaining it. So this new system that we're trying to implement will capture that. So it'll be like the maintenance of each class of asset and the components when they get replaced.
Yeah, I think like to add to what Will's saying there is that there'll be a line of sight. And you can see here, so the framework moving forward for Tofino's asset management system is shown in this slide here, and it's currently what we're working towards. And what this illustration shows is the line of sight of and flow of information between the AM program and Tofino's overall organizational, strategic, financial, and operational documentation, documents, and processes. So the AM system will it'll be refined as needed in the future with revisions to reflect continuous improvement. But this is the idea here, is that there's a direct line of sight. So our AM policy will be speaking to council strategic policies. They'll again be aligned. Our AM strategy will be aligned with master plans and strategies. Our AM plans will be aligned with financial plans. And this goes all the way down to operational plans and procedures. And that at the top being our OCP and our strategic plans. So that's the idea moving forward. Specifically our AM policy, strategies, and plans will be refined as we mature in our asset management practices. So typically you'll start with one version and you'll revise it as you move on. Tofino's current AM policy that we have in place right now has served us well up to this point, but we're working towards improving it to ensure that it reflects council's strategic plan, the OCP and industry best practices. One of the things that it currently doesn't do is integrate natural asset management into the AM plans. So, next slide, we'll go. So as mentioned earlier, we're into now sort of the AM strategy framework status update. As mentioned earlier, there's the 4 core elements of asset management, which are people, assets, information, and finances. So over these next few slides, staff will provide a more detailed update on the work that has been happening in the past 6 months and some of the work staff will be doing over the next couple of years, which is incorporated in a high-level roadmap and will be reviewed at the end of the presentation. So that's the last slide. So in terms of asset management enablers, people are really important. People with the right training, skills, expertise, doing the right activities with the leadership of management and council. So developing an awareness of asset management for all staff is a key milestone, and it's up there. I just realized that I think I need glasses because all I see is just a blur. I do have the slide on my notes here, but so yeah, developing awareness of asset management for all staff is a key milestone that staff are working towards. Currently, select staff members are being developed as internal AM champions, and departmental capacity building is taking place. So some examples of that, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, Natural Asset Management Workshop, the long-term financial planning for asset management course delivered through Asset Management BC, and most recently, the Assessing the Financial Sustainability of Your Municipal Water System workshop delivered by BC Waste and Water Association, BC Water and Wastewater Association are great examples of where this sort of multi-departmental collaboration from finance, asset management, infrastructure, and planning has taken place, where we've collaborated together and gained skills to build organizational capacity. Another capacity building opportunity will be to hold a levels of service workshop with council. Some of the topics covered would be: what are levels of service? So community, technical, regulatory. Do we comply with legal requirements? Do we protect public safety and the environment? Are we achieving strategic plan objectives, growth and sustainability strategies? Again, ensuring the line of sight between AM and organizational policies. What are our current levels of service? How do we measure them? Take our water utility, for example, and at a very high level, I won't get into conservation or anything like that right now, but the legal requirements are that the water is safe to drink. The community level of service is that the water is clear and tastes good, and that fire protection is provided. The technical level of service is that we have the right design flow and pressure for current demand and future growth, the reliability of the system, the chlorine residuals, and the distribution network. Sort of a whole line of sight that we have key measures here to indicate whether or not the water utility is meeting service levels, or if there are gaps between current and expected levels that can be identified and strategies to develop to address these gaps. This is a workshop that staff would like to propose for Q2 of 2024. And then in terms of internal or external communications on the slide, I believe. I can't see. Who are we kidding? One of the priorities for the program is an annual infrastructure report card. So similar to our annual report, but specific to our core infrastructure with key performance indicators that will be implemented to better understand risk, costs, and other service level indicators. People, got that one. No, we're on to assets.
You're still on people.
No, on people. There are assets. Okay, in terms of assets, so this is one of the other 4 core elements of asset management. There's been a lot of work done by our asset management technician, Mr. Treba, to identify gaps and opportunities for improvement of location, material, size, condition, and other important asset attributes, and centralize this information in a GIS mapping software.
So on the GIS front, the district currently uses CGIS mapping software. It's a great starting point, and it's something that we used to start to kind of build the framework for our new software. The real bonus to moving into a new software is that it's editable by staff. So when we have infrastructure upgrades, we can live update that database and make those changes for proper record management. Yeah, so it was a great starting point. But there was a lot of things missing from the data that was in there. So staff have a great record of has-built drawings from all the different projects that have gone over the years. But a lot of the details and the data that were in those hard copies didn't make their way into CGIS. So part of the new system has been taking all of the knowledge on paper and putting it into a new database. So we kicked off PSD Citywide in April 25th of 2023. And it's a great tool because, again, it is editable by ourselves. Sorry. Did you? Well, there we go. So we physically map the asset locations with a GPS positioning device, and we're filling in a lot of the gaps that weren't available. So we have great drawings from certain areas of town, and there's some areas of town that are just blank. So it's a full compilation of all that data. And it's been great. What happened? Sorry, I'm just seeing slides here.
Oh, it was, yeah, it was that.
Okay.
To spread out.
Oh, I see. Okay. So 4.1. So since identifying the kind of missing gaps in the previous GIS program, these are some of the new items that have entered in the system with, again, the actual component information. So in service dates, material, service lives that go in, and these are all components of the overall system. So one of the big ones that Keith touched briefly on was that when we're talking about age-based condition assessment stuff, the components that make up that total system can affect that. So understanding where all your fittings are and what time they were put in the ground is very, very important. Yeah, so this is just a little view of the new layout of Citywide. And it's definitely great. The real key factor that makes Citywide a big progression from CGIS is that we were using before, was the fact that the mapping software can directly be linked to our actual inventory. So if you're looking for an asset on the map, you can click it and you can be directed, staff can be directed back into the financial data on that asset for reporting purposes. That was a big gap in the previous mapping software. Yeah, so these are some of the program activities and projects that we've done. Citywide is in progress. We just initiated the BC One Call program, and we got our first request from BC Hydro on Howard, which was interesting. A day after. Yeah, if you want to go over next stuff.
So where are we at up there? Standardization, information, and finance. Management. Okay, so I'm just going to skip back just a little bit here. There. Okay. Okay, information and finance. So in terms of information and finance, so we're getting back into those four core components, core elements of asset management. So we did the people, and then we did the assets, and now we're into information and finance. So in terms of the information and finance, this is really basically the information, both financial and asset related, that is needed to make decisions about district services and the assets that support them. So standardizing the way that we collect and use asset information is a key priority for the asset management program. Standardized frameworks for asset condition, risk, and levels of service are all in progress and expected to be implemented in Q1 of 2024. Asset management plans for core infrastructure are being developed in a phased approach, beginning, like I was mentioning, with our core infrastructure, the most critical components of that, and are expected to be implemented over the next 2 years. So this is just a slide which is broken up into 2 slides here. So yeah, you can see some asset management plans there that we're going to be working on with some deliverable dates. We'll move on to AM program activities. With the next few slides, specific projects from the AM program will be discussed in a little more detail. This list is not exhaustive, but you can see from the slide that there are a lot of projects in progress or ongoing. Quite a few sanitary and water related projects, as our physical condition assessments have identified a number of interventions required. So basically, I've just pulled out a few of the projects from this list that was up there. One of them is centralizing data through the citywide software management system. So Will was talking about the GIS side of things, and how it can be linked with the actual inventory. And so this is the inventory side of things. So this module supports strategic asset management and serves as a infrastructure asset register that supports all asset data classes and hierarchies, and provides complex lifecycle modeling, risk management, and reporting capabilities to inform decision-making scenarios in real time. ESC Citywide offers other modules as well, like the district's onboarding, permitting, maintenance manager, which I'll talk about just briefly in a few minutes here. Yeah, these other sort of modules sort of help to ensure that assets and associated data can be reported on between district departments. So that ability for the different modules to speak with each other. The implementation of the software is ongoing. Ensuring data quality as we're entering it into the software is one of the key priorities here. Copy. So yeah, the inflow and infiltration sewer main flushing program. I think we talked about it a little bit earlier, but this program's underway here. Just a couple of slides there show you what a sanitary sewer line looks like before it's maintenance, and what it looks like after. So you can see there's a significant increase in capacity there. And this sort of program helps to reduce the potential for nuisance odors and helps protect our infrastructure and meet levels of service for it. Water leak detection program. This is another one of the projects that was in that list. Program goals here to save water, proactively monitor Tofino's water distribution system for leaks. Our public works team and infrastructure staff have just undergone BCWWA training to understand water leaks, how they're initiated, propagated, understand leak detection theory, and understand how to manage water loss and leak detection. So this is an important program for us, and currently underway. On to another project, the tsunami vertical evacuation preliminary planning and cost estimate. So this is, as from what was discussing earlier, is a project that's within infrastructure. Staff are currently reviewing a proposal for the preliminary planning and Class C cost estimate for the TV structure, which proposed a phased approach to the project. So you can see, maybe you can't see there, but we'll skip the next one. There it is. The sort of 8 different phases there for the project structure. Comments and feedback will be provided to the proponent, but staff are generally satisfied with the approach taken with this phased approach. The anticipated completion of the project would be early Q2 2024. So this is just for the cost estimate. This is not the actual construction of the project. So I just want to be clear on that. The completion of this project will position the district to apply for grants to supplement the limited restricted funding arrangement the district has with a private sponsor for the actual construction of the TBE. Okay, so moving on, natural asset management roadmap. So this was another one of the projects. The staff participated in an FCM, so the Federal Canadian Municipalities Natural Asset Management Workshop in June of 2023. So this was a multi-department meeting with finance, planning, asset management, and infrastructure, working together to complete an asset management readiness scale assessment for natural assets. So this is basically assessing the district's level of maturity in natural asset management in 5 FCM readiness scale competency areas. So policy and governance, people and leadership, data and information, planning and decision-making, and contribution to asset management practice. There's a lot. I have quite a few pages on this, but I'll just try and give the Coles notes on it. But in terms of policy and governance, the District of Tofino is currently at level 1. So basically, council and senior staff have identified the importance of natural assets in service delivery, and staff are working towards integrating natural assets into core infrastructure management processes. In terms of people and leadership, we're also at a level 1. So staff from key departments, such as engineering, planning, and finance, have been identified to ensure a holistic and effective approach that can integrate natural asset management into the AM requirements. In terms of data and information, we're also at a level 1. Staff have started to take an inventory of the natural assets in our jurisdiction that support municipal service delivery. So there's a number of areas for improvement that were identified as well for all of these, but I was mentioning there's quite a lot there. So we can talk about that at another time in more depth. That's okay. Planning and decision-making. District of Tofino is also at level 1. Our approach to asset investment planning does not yet include a documented approach to managing or protecting the natural assets that support municipal service delivery. So areas for improvement here. There's a number of them. So integrating natural asset management considerations into any new asset investment plans across service areas, developing a specific natural asset management plan that considers multiple service areas, sharing how much spending is required on natural assets, what might be spent, what is the long-term plan, and considering natural assets in the rate reviews of water and sewer. And then finally, contribution to asset management. We are also at a level 1. There's no formal natural asset management training for staff. Some staff conduct targeted research, seeking out basic information on natural assets, management concepts and techniques. So there's a number of areas for improvement there. The next steps moving forward here with natural asset integration there's another roadmap workshop with FCM, lessons learned workshop on November 22nd that staff will be presenting at. We'll be presenting the completed asset management readiness scale assessment that we did, and also giving an update on Tofino's status of Tofino's natural asset management roadmap. Program next steps, fleet and equipment. And so there's a number of next steps in the immediate future. So our fleet and equipment asset management plan for heavy equipment, asset management framework and roles. So the standardized approach that we talked about, water master plan that was discussed earlier as well. A water asset management plan that will sort of fall out of the master plan. GIS and AM linking that Mr. Kriba was discussing there shortly ago. The maintenance manager kickoff, so training to each department for the maintenance manager module of Citywide. And then also the wastewater treatment uploaded asset componentization into our software. So this is just a brief little sort of highlight of the Citywide Maintenance Manager, which really is just allows us to further our preventive and scheduled maintenance maturity, basically. Create and track service requests, work orders, condition assessments, service life, all while providing that information in a centralized sort of data repository. So final slide. So this is the roadmap that I had mentioned a little bit earlier, but this basically incorporates all the updates provided in this presentation and charts out a path for the district's asset management practices to continue and improve. Can you read that? Some of it, not really. Yeah, so basically there's a number of different phases there that go from Q1 2024 to Q4 2025. The first phase being continue to define the required documents, policies, and structure to operationalize the asset management program. The next phase being developing priority assessment management improvements. So improve asset management process to better track assets and their life cycles. And there's deliverables below them, all that were in the presentation, but just put into this roadmap. The phase 3 is implement improved asset management practices, so implementing improved AM processes and define level of service for core infrastructure. And phase 4 is monitoring and accountability for sustainable service delivery. So that's measuring performance of assets and linking financial information at the O&M, so the operations and maintenance level for core infrastructure. Okay. That took a little bit longer than my 20 minutes, but there was a lot in there. It's been a while coming, so I felt like it was worthy of the effort, basically. So if there's any questions, be happy to
comment.
Yeah,
to the chair. It was long. It was probably as important as it was long. And I know you talked about how rare this level of AM is in BC. I would say that it's probably even rarer across Canada. And that's from my experience at a couple of FCM conferences where I got to speak with many different mayors and staff and councillors from across Canada. I just want to say how important this is for our district and how special it is, especially as we get into the financial planning stage, where we talk about taxes and what it costs to run a town and how far along we are compared to so many other communities who have not taken that route of responsibility and accountability so early on. So I just want to say that it was long, but I think it's extremely important, and I'm really proud to have that. Thank you.
I would just further echo that, if I could just one last comment, further echo everything. It is our prime responsibility to deliver these core services in a financially responsible way. So absolutely. And just the last comment was in terms of the natural asset management, and you alluded to the importance of that as well. And I see that that will be coming up in Q3, Q4 of 2025 on that last slide. So we're still about 2 years out before we'll be able to focus that attention. But I'm glad to see that it is on the radar and it's being talked about, and that we'll be seeing that in the not too distant future.
One last final presentation to council. We're looking for council's feedback on our process. I will go as quickly as possible here. So I want to review the financial plan timeline, look at the budget documents that are currently received by council, and discuss the budget engagement or public engagement on December 13th. So our financial planning process, first draft is coming up on December 5th. This presentation will be operating and capital projects, but it will not be balanced. The second draft coming up on February 15th of 2024 will be a balanced presentation of the operating capital budgets. incorporating any feedback from council received on December 5th and the public engagement on the 13th. And it'll be balanced with the projected impact on tax levy. We will prepare the draft of financial plan bylaws and the tax rate bylaws in anticipation of the deadline for May 15th in March and April respectively. So that's the timeline in a snapshot. So we currently provide to council a detailed financial plan. So it's a very detailed, I think it's like 85 pages or something, of line by line general ledger detail for 5 years. So that's a fairly comprehensive document. So I'm looking for feedback from council in terms of, is this adequate information? Is it too much? Would you like something else? That's what I'm looking for here. Consolidated financial plan document. So this document, I apologize, you cannot really see it, but it's summarizing the programs and impacts on tax levy or taxation, how we the grants we're receiving, the like. So I feel this is a great summary document myself. So I would like to continue providing that particular document. Capital project listing. So we're detailing all of the projects from a capital perspective here, and we're itemizing it in certain categories. We're trying to group by, facilities, roads, those types of big core infrastructure that asset management just discussed. So this is again providing it by year, and we would like to add in future years. I'll have to add that we want to prioritize this listing for council. So we'll prioritize the projects based on a prioritization schedule or ranking. Sorry, it's a little late. Trouble talking. So I don't know if council, had any feedback on those documents I just kind of ran through. I've seen none. I'll continue to provide.
You would like, yeah, I very much appreciate all of the documents, the financial plan, I read all. One thing I would like to say is that it would be nice if the plans, consolidated financial plans, especially, were easier to find when one wants to find things. So that's my on the website.
On the website.
In the future, that's my one comment. If I could change anything about it, otherwise I like it quite a bit. I enjoy the information. Appreciate the information. Maybe not enjoy.
Yeah, I like to get everything. I think it saves me asking a lot of questions down the road if I just look at consolidated, I'm just going to be asking a bunch of questions. So I'd rather have to stop. I can usually sort it out myself.
I just look at the consolidated
I know.
financial plan. Then I ask all the questions.
And lastly, just the public engagement. So we're scheduled for a public engagement on December 13th, together with the ARCD at that event. And currently we have a Talk Tofino page, which incorporates any budget information or maybe some small surveys in there. Social media, through social media, we promote the engagement sessions and inform the community on upcoming meeting dates. Mail outs, we provide an annual tax guide to the community. And this in-person event that we're planning, we're working on a format for December 13th. We'd like council's input into determining that format and how to engage with the community. We're considering using the Water Town Hall as a guide, knowing that there was great turnout. But we're considering aspects of that. And I'd like council's feedback on how that to move forward.
I've got a quick comment there on that one, and I can't remember which year it was because there were no this year, but we had a great community hall presentation of the financial plan where we got to we had the stations that were allocated and ACRD was there, and it sounds like ACRD will be there. So the ability to and then we allocated sort of the, at the time as the managers, I can't remember what we were called back then, but sat at stations, and then a counselor would sit at the stations as well to provide feedback to the public on those areas. And I found it was very well received by the public, in my opinion. It was a nice format. It was formal enough to be able to get the information out, but it was informal enough that people were comfortable. And we had, if I remember correctly, we had a fairly decent turnout at that meeting. And so that was it was at the community hall. I would suggest snacks. But yeah, it was food always brings them in, right? So yeah, that's in terms of feedback, that was something that I found highly valuable.
Thank you. Can I add one more thing? Quality snacks. You know, Gaia platters or something.
And that concludes our presentation. Thank you so much.
Yes, I'm not now. Great. On our agenda, we don't have any unfinished business. And question period, I will look over to Keegan to see if anyone's stuck with us. That's questions.
You, Councillor Steer, I will now do a call for public questions. If there is anyone attending online via Zoom and would like to make a question, you can do so now using the Q&A function on Zoom. You will need to state your name, your address, and the agenda item you are speaking to. I will now do a call going once, going twice, going 3 times. There are no questions at this time. Thank you, Councillor Steer.
That Q&A that I see up there was already addressed. And
Yes.
it just, the little one on the Q&A still showing. Great, so that's it. Thank you. We'll now move into our closed session, and I'll read from the chair that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to section 90 of the community charter to discuss matters relating to 1L discussions with municipal officers, employees respecting municipal objectives, measures and progress reports for the purpose of preparing an annual report under section 98 annual municipal report. Thank you, Councillor Sloman, for seconding that. All those in favor? Excellent. And we want to take a 5-minute break here.